Jeetu, so I would like to start with you. You have in my opinion, a very interesting story. You come from India and then you move to the US. You're not the first one, and you're not going to be the last one.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily as common. You move up the rank. You had a really incredible career, and I know that you had an ambition. I'm sure you lived through uncertainty. You had your identity shift or crisis, as every human being has. Tell me more. If we rewind before the titles that you have and the Cisco story, what's really the story and most people don't know about how you got there?
It's a great question. And every once in a while, you kind of go back memory lane and say, what was the psychology like when you were first getting started? And I think for me, just like everyone else, there was a lot of insecurity. There was a lot of uncertainty. There was a lot around, am I smart enough to be able to do it? Kind of mentality. But the one thing that helped me was I had a mother I had to take care of in India, financially, and failure was not an option. And so the way that the whole thing kind of transpired is like all of those things around insecurity and imposter syndrome and all might have been there, but I had to figure out a way to just make sure that we succeeded, because it was my mother and me, and we had to make sure that we actually survived. And so that became a tremendous driving force of focus, which was, there was a singular focus. I just had to make sure that we made enough money to earn a good living and survive. And whatever I needed to do, as long as it was in the bounds of ethics and integrity. And I can tell you a little bit about why that was so important, is because my dad was a high stakes con man and he was a criminal. And so,
oh, wow.
I didn't want to actually live that life. And so I'm like, I explicitly left India to get away from that. And so I'm like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do it the hard way, but I want to make sure that we actually, my mother and I can have a good life. And that was the motivating factor that drove a lot. But, like anyone else who's coming in, like you're still always questioning whether or not you're good enough, whether or not you can make something happen. I think what ends up happening with social media especially is everyone's image looks picture perfect. And the reality is all of us go through a bunch of struggles, and all of us have ups and downs and emotional, kind of anxieties that happen from time to time. And the more we share those, the more I think it's better for society to understand that there's no one living a perfect life. Everyone's got struggles and everyone's got levels of imperfection that they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
You know what? First of all, thank you so much already. Even in the first few minutes, to be so much, open, transparent, and vulnerable about your past, which to me is always a great sign of leaders. So that's, I think, to me, set quite well the scene for the conversation we'll be having.